It has been a minute since I've done a long form type of video, so today let's make a pair of my Jute SB Dunk customs. And for this colorway in particular, we're going to be using the Dunk SB black gum as the base sneaker. And this custom was sort of an accident or unintentional, I guess, at first, because I bought myself a pair of these black gum SBs from a local sneaker store, and I ended up not really wearing them as much. I'm not really like a big black sneaker person. I feel like white and lighter colored shoes are just easier to wear with my style. And I also had bought this jute material a while back because I planned on using it on a pair of Sambas, and that just kind of fizzled away for some reason. So I made a mock-up using these black SBs, and they looked fantastic. So that same day I made the mock-up, I went ahead and got started on these, and then, as they say, from there it was history. As far as the process for creating these goes, first we start by deconstructing the toe box, the swooshes, and the back tab. And the reason we do this is so we can create stencils for each of the panels that we'll be replacing with the jute material. And this is relatively simple to do. You just take tape, a pen, and then trace out the outline of where the material is going to go. And then from there we take our stencil and place it over the design on the bag that we want on the sneaker. Just as a side note, we will not be cutting the exact outline that we trace. We're going to leave a little bit of an overhang just so that way it tucks nicely under the adjacent panels. And for our exposed edges, like here where the tongue meets the toe box, we're going to do what's called a reverse stitch. And basically, as you can see from the video, we're going to reverse the material, stitch it down, and then flip it over for a nice clean edge that'll also hide the stitching. So once we have that stitched, before we flip it over, we're going to put down a basting adhesive so that way it keeps our jute material in place so it doesn't look all loose and crappy once we stitch the toe box back together. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend raw dogging it like I did. I'd probably tape off where you don't want the basting adhesive to get on if it's your first time doing this, but I figured out how to clean it off at the end, so there's no worries there. But restitching our toe box and the other panels is relatively simple. All you have to do is just follow the original holes from the factory. Once we have our toe box done, we can move on to the mid sections and then just continue to work our way back. And once we have our material cut out, we're going to go ahead and deconstruct those mid panel sections. And for me personally, I like to deconstruct these in stages so that way the shoe can maintain its original shape better. And as I'm cutting these, I'm also removing the old loose threads so that way we can just have a clean look once we're done. And again, we don't want any raw edges, so using our double-sided sewing tape, we're going to do that reverse stitch near the midsole. And once we have that locked into place, we're going to put down that basting adhesive again and tuck our jute material behind the adjacent panels. Since our eyelet section on SBs goes under the wings in the rear foxing area, we'll start there. And again, this process is the same throughout. You're just going to follow the original factory holes. Now that we finished the midsection, we can move back to the rear. So we'll cut the back side of the foxing around the heel. This part for me is usually the most time consuming just because we do have to do the reverse stitch all around the lining and then fold it over. So it's a little bit more work, but I think it all pays off in the end. I think it's worth it too because doing this reverse stitch also allows the material to be more durable around the edges. Because this jute material is such a delicate material, if you were just to leave a raw edge, it would tend to fray and maybe even come apart after a lot of wear. And when I make these customs, I want them to not only look nice but also be wearable pieces of art. So having that durability gives me peace of mind that your sneakers are going to last much longer rather than if I just took the shortcut. So once we have the rear done, the finish line is near and we can swap out our thread and go ahead and stitch those swooshes back on. And to get a perfect alignment, we just use the stitch holes that you can see on the rear foxing area. We just roughly line up those holes with the holes on the swooshes, and then from there in the mid area we just make sure that the swoosh looks straight. And I found that starting at the tip of the swoosh is easier to keep it aligned because that basting adhesive doesn't really stick too well to the jute. So once we have that locked into place, it's usually smooth sailing from there. And now that we have our swooshes stitched back on, we are moving on to one of our final steps of sewing back down the back tabs. So we'll swap out our thread once again back to black, apply our basting adhesive, and then fold it into place. We sew down using the same method of following the factory stitch holes. So once we're done stitching our back tabs, we are ready to cut and burn our thread and lace these things up. And while I normally just put the regular black SB laces back into the sneaker, I figured I'd show you guys the additional laces that I include in every order. I feel like these laces pair very well with the sneaker's theme. I think the jute bags kind of give off a vintage sort of vibe, and these laces also match that vibe. So I think these look really nice in there, but some of my Instagram and TikTok comments on these may not agree with me as much. Either way, I really love this custom and I really enjoy making them, and I hope you guys feel the same. I think my favorite aspect of the sneaker is kind of the controlled chaos that I have going on. In sort of like a toned down way, it's like my own rendition of the What The series that Nike always does. Or if you remember around the same time when Flyknit was the shit, and that knit on each sneaker was a little bit different, but it was still the same design. That's kind of the look I wanted to have here. So while every order isn't going to look the same, I love that because each shoe is sort of individually made specifically for that person and tells a different story. And if you like customs like this one, definitely stay tuned to see what we have coming up next. I'm definitely going to be experimenting with some more crazy materials like this, so subscribe or drop a follow if you want to see what we got cooking up. And now for the second half of this video, I'm going to also be making the white pair that we released shortly after the black pair. So I'm going to shut up and let y'all enjoy some sneaker making ASMR. same thing goes. We're gonna cut and burn our thread and lace these up, and this time around I'm just throwing the regular Dunk SB laces back in these, and here is the final look. And if you made it this far in the video, drop me a comment letting me know which colorway you prefer more, the black or the white. And if you want to grab a pair for yourself, they are available now on our website. That link is in our bio. I'll also put that up on the screen too. These have been a staple in my growth as a sneaker customizer, so I'll be leaving these up as long as the materials are available, so make sure to get those orders in now while you can. And as I mentioned earlier, we have some more crazy stuff coming at you guys here soon, so make sure you drop me a follow so you can stay tuned.